And welcome to tonight's episode of PCP, the Pagan Center Podcast. I'm Dave.
I'm not here.
Alright, and also joining us tonight are...
I'm Barrett.
I'm Amanda.
I missed.
I'm Snooze.
Alright, and tonight we're going to talk about the topic of being too polite to tell sexual offenders to get the heck out. So, this is going to be a snooze episode. We'll get to that right after these messages. And we're back. Alright. So this is an episode... We're going through the list of episodes that we've been working on for a while now. And this is one of those episodes that we've been working on for a while, give or take a year. One of the things that kicked us off into high gear in terms of us actually putting things together and down on Google Docs, and it's not quite paper, is a story out of Australia that a man manipulated 15-year-olds to, actually, let me reread the story. I don't even remember what this is about anymore. Yay, post-production.
Good job.
Yeah, I am on top of this. No, not really.
Well, while Dave reads the story, let's do a round robin and get everybody's opinion of the definition of sexual predator. Because I got this fetish for identifying terms, so let's... I'll even start off, okay? My personal belief is all participants in a sex act should be able to refer to puberty in the same tense.
Yeah,
That works.
That's a good one.
Okay? I mean, I'm not endorsing anything, but I mean, I understand. People learn about the birds and the bees, play doctor, high schoolers will be high schoolers. I understand middle schoolers will be high schoolers anymore, but hey, let's not go there. But everybody should be should be able to refer to puberty in the same tense. Okay.
While that's a good rule of thumb, it doesn't really define sexual predator, because they can be the same. A victim and the predator can be the same age and still be a predator.
Well, I think the main thing, and I actually like Skir's, it might be easier to say what isn't a sexual predator sometimes, but I think the biggest one is if everybody's not agreeing and on the same page, or if somebody is sort of out of agreement by default because they're either unconscious or drugged, or they've been mentally or emotionally manipulated while they were vulnerable. Yeah, that pretty much racks right up there. We actually had a discussion about this on the, I did a blog entry when Brendan Myers started the community statement of religious sexual abuse. That was like a working title. I'm not sure what they really wound up with, but that was a project that was ongoing for a while, trying to make a statement, because in the non-monotheistic faith, the pagan faith, we do have a lot of different rules, that we don't have as many taboos, we don't have as many don'ts, but we still do have some standards. And what they were trying to accomplish was to get a statement down to try to explain to non-pagans that, okay, just because this guy is going around raping women and cutting their boobs off and gluing them to their heads and says that that's Wiccan practice, does not mean that he knows what he's talking about, or that the rest of us are going to endorse that or do that sort of thing. And they were trying to come up with a good, cohesive...
Excuse me, I was hallucinating there. Could you say that again?
Which part?
Did you just say cutting boobs off and gluing to head?
Well,
Yeah,
I was going for something nicely extreme that I didn't feel like anybody could argue with being normal pagan practice. And if anybody is wanting to argue with me about that being normal pagan practice, see me after the bell. I got to go get my ball bat.
So that didn't actually happen yet, or at least.
Well, I'm not going to say it didn't happen, but what that one guy did to Sherry Harlan was pretty disgusting. She was a West Coast Wiccan lady that got rather gruesomely murdered and dismembered by her boyfriend, and he went on the news saying that he was on a Wiccan blood oath because she had violated her blood oath to him to do so on, and it was all a bunch of garbage, but it was the usual type of thing. Somebody in the press went to his house and photographed some really crappy mess in his backyard and tried to play all Don Romer's Satanic Panic with it, and it was stupid as usual.
Don Romer's dead, motherfucker, yeah! Anyway.
Shit. Target practice. Oh, I'm sorry, did I say that?
Only if you're pissing on his grave.
Hey, go for it. I think we should dig his head up and use it in a weird satanic ritual myself. But
Oh, you know, Christian Day likes collecting skulls.
oh, cool. We could have a set. You could have a set. Isn't that how you play bocce?
Okay.
Well, the long and the short of it, though, was they wanted to get something cohesive, not necessarily a, these are the rules and you will obey them, you know, but kind of something cohesive that you could hand the police department or the news media that says, okay, there is some stuff, even if we have fewer rules than you do, that we still don't go all happy, fun time over. And it was a good idea. I'm not sure where they're at in the development of it, but I lost track. But we had a discussion on the blog entry that I did about it, where people were, oh, well, does this mean that the BDSM fetish community is going to go out down the tubes, or does this mean you're going to discriminate against anybody that, you know, practices Harris-Gamos for real, or da-da-da-da, all these questions. And there were actually some very good comments. I'm trying to resurrect them from when I changed my comment format. I have them archived, and if I can, I'll put them back up on that blog link that's in the show notes. But the long and the short of it was, everybody was pretty much kind of able to agree that if you can't get consent from a fairly rational, coherent adult for whatever you're doing, don't frickin' do it.
Well, yeah, I remember the drama that was generated over this. And, well, I mean, considering this was first generated on a Pathos property, it doesn't surprise me that there was drama associated with this. But, you know, it just seemed like there was drama over stupid things like consensual sex. We want the sex to be consensual, and pagans were against that. It's like, well, what about bondage play? Consensual. Bondage counts as consensual.
If everybody handled their relationships with the level that most of the BDSM fetish community does, of making very sure that communication has happened and that everybody understands safe words and everybody's on the same page, they'd all probably be better off. Brenda did a fantastic job with the project up to the point where I had stopped keeping track of it because I just had too much going on.
It is an ongoing project. The last update was in May of 2010, but this project has been handed over to Jason Pitzawaters of Pathos.
Okay. Well, like I said, I haven't really kept up with it except for the drafts that Brendan had created, which, again, that wound up, I think, getting, I don't know even use the word stuck or mired in some disagreement, like you were just talking about. But
well,
yeah, he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I remember when this was just going to be like, you know, 4 brief bullet point statements. But now it's kind of gotten drawn out into this, like, 2-part, 3-page document of doom.
Well, and one of the other objections that several people had, which I understand why they were upset about it on principle, but I feel like they weren't really looking at the big picture on this, and I hate to use the word like big picture, but it's there. There were plenty of people that agreed with everything that was in the statement. Their issue was that someone was setting themselves up to be the person to make the declaration. And they didn't agree with, there was a lot of the phrase pagan pope thrown around and that kind of thing.
Pagan
and
pope
again,
paranoia. How dare anybody
Yeah.
pretend to be the pagan pope? Well, dude, who's going to say something if you don't allow anybody to say anything?
Well, exactly, and I offered to get Brendan a cool hat, a big pointy hat thing, but, it just, that was kind of where it was at. And I understand that objection, but at the same time, I think that is one of those things where you have to sit down and say, okay, it's not going to be perfect, it's not going to be flawless, it's not going to cover everything with no difficulties or no room for interpretation. But it's still needed. Look at Kerr Lane's Law Enforcement's Guide to Wicca. Does it cover all the tenets of Wicca? No, of course it doesn't. If it did, God forbid, they'd die of old age before they read the thing. It covers a basic overview that, if nothing else, presents to law enforcement that what they're looking at may not be what they think it is, and it gives them enough to start from in an extremely functional and readable fashion.
You just got to give enough information to make an informed decision, basically.
Exactly. To give, if nothing else, just to give somebody the idea that, okay, this is where we start from, but we know that we don't know what we're looking at. To me, that's the biggie right there. And it's being used by law enforcement to great effect, so that speaks for itself. And I looked at the sexual statement, community statement, as sort of being something like that, if it works out that way. I feel like we need something like that because we're not mainstream. Somebody's going to get their nads in a wad about that. Big deal. Anytime you have something that departs from what is seen as the norm, you have other things that depart from the norm that are going to try to identify with it or try to use it to establish a norm or some type of validation for themselves. We do get the crazy. So do fringe Christian groups, extremist, Islamist groups. Anytime you've got something that's as emotionally charged and got as much social and culture baggage possibly tied up in it, you're going to have somebody that's a complete looper, trying to either hide in it or use it for their own purposes. And I feel like since we're not mainstream, we got loads and loads of outright misinformation or deliberate lying to overcome with what we do believe and who we are. I feel like it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Give us, Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think the problem is that the pagan community paints a giant friggin' target on itself. We have long had a history of not having very good relations with law enforcement. We have very long tried to avoid government involvement short of suing the crap out of people or fighting for rights. And as a result, we don't talk to the law enforcement community about stuff. Even among pagans, law enforcement seems to be a little bit outcast. And as a result of us not going to the police about anything, it's just like the immigrant communities. They don't go to the police, so they paint a giant target on themselves in the process. So people that want to break the law and do illegal things, let's not even begin to think about immoral, sexual predator crap. They know they can get away with it in the pagan community because they know we won't report them.
there's that. I mean, we had a con artist in our community not too long ago, and people knew that they knew what he was doing. They knew he was a con artist, and those of us that went to the police about it got a lot of flack because, well, you're selling out one of your own. We need to stick together. It's, you know, it's kind of like I all but heard somebody go, "You cop to the man." You know, I was like, God, please. The thing of it is, somebody that behaves in this, you know, solidarity and looking out for each other and all for one, one for all, that's fantastic. There are a lot of people that have worked long and hard to develop a sense of community support and that looking out for each other to make the pagan community as a whole, or its many communities within it, stronger. And I applaud that, because that's work. That's hurting cats, man. That's hurting cats with dynamite strapped to their butts. But the thing of it is, someone who behaves in an extremely harmful fashion and tries to use your religion to excuse themselves or buy their way out of any responsibility or repercussions for it is not your brother.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that co-opts your religion to smokescreen and deflect attention away from what they're doing, or to enable them to carry this stuff out, that ain't your sister, okay? That's what you just said a minute ago. That's a predator. That's not part of your pack.
You know, a lot of people don't trust the police because police have a very strong brotherhood. One will stand up for each other, for good or worse. I mean, if one person's corrupt, the other will back them up, and that's kind of the stereotype law enforcement deals with. And yet, here we are looking at the pagan community doing exactly the same thing, protecting predators.
And the other thing that I notice a lot of is, and again, I understand this, there's so many people in the pagan community that have experienced intolerance. They're almost shell-shocked, gun-shy. Is shell-shocked or gun-shy a better term there? Against anything that might be intolerance against someone else. And we've run into that here. We got a guy in the community that was exhibiting, or still is, I guess. That's an ongoing situation. Predatory behavior, and we had so many people saying we can't be judgmental, and we need to be tolerant of other people's beliefs and ways, and you know, if this is his group, he can run it like he wants to. And several of them in private are willing to say, the guy's a dirtbag. I know it. He tried to recruit my 15-year-old daughter and told her she didn't have to have daddy's permission to come to his coven meetings and that kind of thing. But he did not want to say anything in public because he figured that, you know, somebody would actually say, well, you're being judgmental. And the people that were saying something in public and saying we need to do something about this person, they were getting told everything from you're being judgmental, you're being intolerant, to you're starting a witch war. And I have determined that anybody that actually uses the phrase witch war within my hearing and means it, I will bite. You know, and I won't brush my teeth first. So,
Note
it's
self.
Oh, Scurv, you can outrun me, you know it.
Actually, I wouldn't be so sure about that.
I'll give you a head start.
But yeah, yeah, back to a slightly earlier topic when you said, now remember what you just said about the whole asking daddy's permission and all that stuff? Okay. Now, we're going to go back to my rules for sexually appropriate, okay? Now, I'm very keyed into this whole indie age group thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, if a bunch of middle schoolers decide that they want to start a Wiccan coven, good luck. Okay? And if they want to do it without telling their parents, well, that's the age. It's going to happen anyway. Okay, wow, whatever. Kids do a lot of things without telling their parents. But when the guy is, and this is just my opinion, but when the guy who is past puberty and of drinking age is telling a 15-year-old, you don't have to tell your dad, yeah, there's something wrong there.
Ding, 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 ding. We have a winner. I mean, we have a policy, you know, if you're under 18, you can't even come to one of our events unless we meet with a responsible adult who, you know, has some say over what you do, or the adult comes with you. And one of the reasons we do that is exactly that, you know, that type of thing. I feel like you need to be extra careful when you're dealing with kids, just because all it takes is one person wanting to say something weird or silly that might not even be anything to it, and you got a problem. And the best way to counter that is to have witnesses and transparency. And it's this, the warning bells and the red flags were going off all over the place about this guy with the way he was treating and handling his coven, and some of the policies. And these are all things that we heard from a wide variety of people that don't really connect with each other and don't really compare notes with each other over a period of, you know, a couple of years. When you have 4 or 5 people come tell you that their coven membership paper that you have to sign has a clause in it where you testify or you attest to the fact that you are not involved with or employed by any law enforcement agency, somebody's head should explode.
Yeah, that tends to kind of mean they're doing something they really shouldn't be, or at least in my head it does. And if somebody's going to say, you can't go talk to the cops because we're all going to get arrested, I don't know that I really want to be involved with those people.
Exactly. And the part of the deal, too, this is one of the reasons why I say that anybody that's going to behave like this ain't your brother, Pagan, okay? Part of somebody that comes into a place like, or an event, or just a religion or a community like this, it's not about practicing their faith. It's about being a predator and finding a way to not only cloak your actions, but one of the things that an abuser does is convince their victim that what they're doing is okay or normal, or even if it's not okay and normal, they convince them that it's their fault. That's textbook abuser practice.
Absolutely.
And that gets applied to what happens in the pagan community when you get somebody, and then we wind up being extra special handy for that, because when you get down to metaphysics, you get people that will employ things like, oh, well, we were lovers in a past life, or the spirits have said that you're my soulmate. Or I mean, we had a 28-year-old guy that showed up on the Grove or whatever that was going predatory after a 14-year-old. One of our participants.
Yeah, you painted a freaking bullseye on yourselves by having the no police clause. I mean, the first thing a predator's going to do is like, ding, 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 I can rape 5-year-olds. Dude, summon the spirit of Amber into the show.
Well, this was a guy that his target was the daughter of a lady wonderful lady that was participating in some of the Grove events, and he showed up on the Yahoo group throwing out all this stuff about they had a soul. And you remember me telling you about the ancient Gaelic Mormon half dragon half unicorn other king guy?
What?
Dragon?
Yeah, that
Mormon's a kin type?
I'll go with that, sure.
It was surreal. I saved that entire conversation thread just because you can't make shit like that up. he was going predator on the 14-year-old daughter of one of our participants. That she comes, and she used to come to some events. She's a great kid, and she had told him, "Get the hell away from me. Stay the hell away from me." And he got on this deal. He was trying to play this crap of, "Oh, we're soulmates, and we've been soulmates since the beginning of time for millennia."
My penis says we're soulmates.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I'm not sure whether his penis was the dragon or the Mormon otherkin. Asking that. But he had already, the reason he was going after her was because he had already kind of nailed her 17-year-old friend and told her all of this garbage, and she believed him. And we actually had people quit the group because we were being age discriminatory, or we were standing in the way of cosmic love.
Oh my God! And
I'm like,
people read romance novels?
See, and then this is why we paint a target on ourselves.
Okay.
To do that.
Here, I'm just gonna blabber from the hip real quick, okay?
Preach it, brother.
If you and the person you are wanting as a prospective partner cannot go down to the justice of the peace right now and get married, there might be an issue. Well, I mean, let's ignore the whole gender bias thing, okay? But if you can't take, if the person's too young to take to the justice of the peace to get married, wait. If it's a whole cosmic thing, okay. It's
if
fine.
it's cosmic, it'll still be there.
Exactly. There we go.
Well, the tricky thing about that, though, is that there for quite several years, the legal age of consent in North Carolina was 13.
Sexual or marital? There's a difference some places.
Sexual was 13. You can be married as young as 12 if you can prove that the bride has been impregnated by the prospective groom.
God, that's
without parental permission. Welcome to North frickin' Carolina. Beautiful mountains, bunch of weirdos.
I mean, Alabama, it was 14 with parental permission a few years ago. I don't know what it is now.
Well, they raised it back up to 15. But I think the clause about being able to be married as young as 12, as long as the girl's knocked up by the guy, is still in place. I'd need to check on that. It's not something I keep up with on a regular basis. The main reason that I was keeping up with it there for a while is because of something that happened with a friend of mine's daughter and how their family saw fit to solve it, which is one of the reasons why she's no longer my friend. There's some weird standards out there that are left over from a time period when marriage didn't really have necessarily anything to do with love. It was a business transaction that some people entered their daughters into to make sure they were provided for so they didn't starve on the street. And that's, I mean, there's been times and there's been cultures where not starving to death on the street was the bottom line or the thing that you worried about the most, and I understand that. But most of those cultures also had different provisions for dealing with that, all of the stuff that might go along with that. We don't.
Right.
And we don't live in an age where that's your main consideration anymore, and I don't feel that throwing back to it helps anything.
But I think it also sheds a very sad light that all the drama that was about Brendan Meyer's statement. I like to blame Pathos for everything under the sun that I can. But I don't think this is them for once. I think the pagan community, the mass that is the mainstream pagan community, your Silver Ravenwolf, and, however you want to paint those people that are mainstream pagan, they are fully in support of this crap.
And you would think they wouldn't be, because you get a whole bunch of them that are constantly screaming, harm none, harm none, harm none. Well, hello, this is classified under harm, and if you look at kids who've been assaulted very young, they have rape victim syndrome. That's harm. I call that some rather serious harm.
But they're in love. And love is not harm.
Well, and one of the other things that I've heard people cop out on that is the whole thing of, well, when you're drawing down and you're doing Hurascamas, you're not yourselves anymore. You're the god and the goddess. The thing about it is, I'm going to be bigoted and prejudiced here and say that if you're drawing down and you're not yourself anymore, then your ability to make an informed decision has been compromised. Now, if you made that decision as an educated and informed adult, mazel tov, have at it, baby. But I am going to have to say that with some, and you'd have to show me the exception, and nobody's opinion matters as much to me as my own. Somebody who's 13, 14, 15 years old is not going to understand everything that goes along with the concept of drawing down or aspecting. Mm-hmm. And they should not, I don't think that they should be considered as making an adult, able to make an adult decision on everything that might go along with that. Voodoo and Santeria and the African diasporic religions, as my understanding, they have rules on, like, if they do a fate for the Gide, or Gide, depending on how you want to say it. I get corrected all the time. They don't allow very, very young people in there because there's no telling what you're going to run into, and it's not a good idea. An adult can make an informed decision and say what they want to do for themselves. I mean, if they're responsible about it, why can't everybody be?
Right. Well,
so yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was actually trying to cough. My bad.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I have to agree with what you said about, if you're not yourself, then you can't make an informed decision. I mean, it kind of goes back to the concept of, how they say, if you're drunk or drugged or anything like that or unconscious, you can't give consent because your perception and your decision making skills are taken over by something else. So if you aren't yourself because you're in some altered state, how is that any different from being drunk and having your decision making abilities changed?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, from a legal perspective, that's totally, I think it falls under the same thing. If you're out of mind, well, we still hold you accountable for crap you do when you're drunk. But at the same time, I also have a firm belief that being drunk brings out the innermost self, and all it does is remove your sensors. So you get to see the true being underneath all the sensors.
And it does. It's just one of those, if you can't, well, and I mean, I guess looking at it from a legal standpoint, I mean, if you can't be considered to give informed consent because your inhibitions are gone, you wouldn't necessarily do this as a normal, balanced, sane person because you're not always.
Yeah, I mean, that's how some roofies work. You just get rid of your inhibition.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't legally give consent on something that gets rid of your inhibitions, what's any different about some ritual trance or altered state? It's the same issue legally, regardless. At least in my opinion.
Yeah, temporary insanity, however you want to classify it. I mean,
I agree with that. And there's probably going to be somebody out there that says, but if you're drawing down or you're aspecting, you're under the care and control of, Teg God or Teg Goddess or your God or your Goddess, depending on how they look at it, and they wouldn't allow you to come to harm. I'm not going to say that they would, but Spirit's priorities and definitions of what's good for you and what's not don't always adhere to the current society or culture that you live in.
Yeah.
And I feel like even if you trust your deity or whoever that you're dealing with on that, there's still some room there where somebody might need to say, whoa, wait a minute. So I feel like that's an area that needs to be, somebody needs to just say, okay, that needs to be an informed adult thing.
Kind of also makes me think of yeah, is what a lot of what my parents told me when you're driving. You know, make sure you're paying attention, because it's not that I don't trust you; it's that I don't trust anybody else on the road. You know, trust your deity as you will, and trust yourself, but don't necessarily trust the other person's going through the same thing and gives a damn about you.
That statement is so made of when.
I just keep this much in mind whenever I hear the word deity and trust. They have too much free time on their hands.
They really do.
From the chat room, trust in Allah, but tie up your camel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So looping back to the beginning of the conversation, I finally got a heads up on what the story that triggered this whole thing was about. Is a person claiming to be a witch in Australia. Naturally, all of the press had all kinds of fun with this, and he managed to get his supervision time, where he would need all kinds of supervision, reduced from 15 years down to a mere 5 years. And he got tossed in underneath the whole pagan umbrella, regardless of whether or not he actually gave two craps about paganism. But the interesting thing is that this news story hit the wire. It was pretty well publicized, and yet pagans didn't really care. There was no chastisement. There was no anger. There's nobody. It was like, oh, yeah, whatever. Like I remember back in 2007, there was 2007. If you were listening to a pagan podcast, you cannot go through a single show, for an entire year without hearing about the topic of predators in a show at least twice. And here we are 5 years later in 2012, and you just don't hear about this anymore. Right now it's just pagans are like, oh, well, we'll defer to law enforcement, who we don't really talk to anyway. And we're not doing a whole lot to inform the news media that, hey, we're not freaking crazy. I mean, yeah, there's the Brandon Myers thing, but I mean, do you think the average newsroom actually has a copy of that hanging around somewhere? I mean. And then there was the whole crap situation that, Snooze has been talking about. But I think that the thing that really got my emotions going was the whole Penn State scandal. And we are, sufficiently far away to just, have an emotional / time distance between us and this event. I'm still kind of pissed off about it. When the news broke that Joe Paterno was helping to effectively cover up, what was going on with someone old having sex with young boys. I mean, let's get that allegation as clear as we can. And then Penn State students and residents get so pissed off they go after the news media, not because of they're going after the news media for reporting it, not going after Joe Paterno and the guy that actually did this crap for what they did. No, they're going after the news media because how dare you say something bad about our leader, or a person we perceive to be our leader.
Yeah, because it's Joe Pa, and they idolize people, and say, how dare you even suggest that our idols aren't godlike and perfect.
And I think there's one tweet that actually sums up that whole mess. It's from Angry Black Lady, who if you never heard of, she's actually kind of a funny lady. She's on Twitter, Angry Black Lady. And her tweet is, seriously, ESPN, Joe Paterno is the collective father of PSU? Yeah, a father who looks the other way when your creepy uncle gets molested.
Oh, man.
I like it.
I might actually evolve to tweeting just to follow her.
Yeah, she's kind of fun.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying she's kind of fun.
If she's the same one that there's a
YouTube series and everything.
Yeah, I like her. She's brilliant. She's a Beer and Cookies Award person. It's that whole thing. I'm still going whiskey the hell tango foxtrot. over. I'm just. But the thing about it is, you see people doing that even in their own families when something happens. Like, somebody would rather believe that their 12-year-old daughter is a slut than believe that their husband is a freak.
Yep.
That kind of
sexual
thing.
experience she had when she was 12, by a close family member. Oh, no, that was no big deal.
Yeah, she was wearing a bathing suit, so she asked for it. That kind of crap.
Which is why I love the slut walk movement. I mean, that is definitely a way to convey the message that, a way a woman dresses is not an excuse for raping her.
Well, there's people in equatorial tribes that have run around with nothing for how many thousands of years, and they don't have this problem.
I remember this argument. This was in the 90s. I had one kind of like this. How did it go? Oh, that's right. Yeah, some cockmaster was open base back then. Went on base. He vandalized the fuck out of my car just because I took a shit when he was in his laundry, when he was doing laundry on base, and he's a fucking civilian. But I might have had that coming. But it's my fault he vandalized my car because I had a car.
Yeah, why did you have a vagina? Or why were you walking down the street and, that same old. People's brains will come up with the weirdest, most nonsensical, crazy crap to avoid dealing with something that they don't want to process.
I want to protect myself and my tribe and our dignity. Therefore, you must be wrong. I will make up a reason for you to be wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah, pretty much. I tried explaining to somebody one time. There was a lady that came to FSG several years ago when we were there, and I was working the front gate registration. And she was there as some kind of a weird plant for somebody because she came up acting as if she had registered and then was taking pictures all of a sudden of someone checking in with their children. And then she started going gazoo about how, this information here says that this is clothing optional. There are adult events here, and yet there's someone checking in there with someone who's obviously only 5 or 6 years old. Da, 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 da. And we tried to kind of explain to her a little bit, just on the off chance that she was just loopy and could be reasoned with, that people can run around at clothing optional events or naturalist events and nobody cares, because we don't automatically assume that nudity means that not only isn't the sexual thing, but that you've automatically got to jump on it like white on rice, and that there is no other option. You can't possibly have any other thing to do. And I guess a little bit of it's to blame is Puritanism. I could probably find an excuse to blame Freud for something else.
Reminds me of a Supreme Court case from 2011 where they were trying to say that, why is it that we ban nudity from television? I mean, nudity and sex are two totally different things. And then Supreme Court justices are like, oh yeah, well, we can't have nudity. And he's like, well, look around this room. I can see 3 naked people in this very room right here. And they will all shut the fuck up.
But it's, I guess it's one of those things that because the culture has so many taboos and so many hang-ups, that also means that they have that many more problems dealing with anything in a healthy fashion. So we not only get the freaks and the fruitcakes, we get with people that can't deal effectively with the freaks and the fruitcakes because they don't have a healthy base to start from themselves. Yeah, I'm not saying
like that positive only thinking we were talking about last week.
Yeah, there you go. It's all screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
Please.
Yeah, and I think this whole bullshit excuse of we need to stick together. Yeah, no. That ended well over a decade ago. We don't need to stick together anymore. We're quite the
Okay.
critical mass.
A while ago, and this has been a hobby of mine, I'm trying to work on a new code of ethics, and I know it sounds strange, but I want something attainable, you know? Basically a list of thou shalt not be a douchebags.
So basically all the stuff from the Satanic Bible.
Dave, don't make me say words that we're going to have to post-produce out. But a long and the short of it is here's what I want from my pagan brothers and sisters. I don't mind if I'm embarrassed being seen with you in public, but I don't want to be afraid of going to jail if I'm seen with you in public.
Yeah, that's a good one. Which is kind of consistent with respect to, understand the laws of the land you are currently in. One of the satanic something or others.
Yeah, that's just generally a good idea.
Well, I just want to quickly clarify. I mean, the whole we need to stick together thing, I'm not saying that we shouldn't work together as pagans. I'm just saying that we shouldn't be forced together as pagans. If you're full of fail, I'm going to say bye-bye to you.
Yeah, this all-inclusive thing just brings in all kinds of stupid. And it's time to start quality control, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you can't control yourself, then I don't want anything to do with you, because I don't want to deal with crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need crazy in my life. I have enough caused by my own self.
And granted, the pagan community does attract its fair share of crazy, and it spices things up a little. It's just that dangerous, illegal kind of crazy that we get worried about.
Yeah, you get the right kind of crazy, brings in creativity and productivity and all kinds of good things. Mm-hmm. The wrong kind of crazy makes everybody,
loopy.
Across the street.
But, yeah, I think the wrong kind of crazy is kind of like what we get back at. It's the ABCDEF. It's
False evaluation frame.
That's it. Yep. And which can be applied to people as well as entire groups, which is very interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is a brilliant piece of work.
But actually, somewhere buried in the notes here, I actually found the summary of what Brandon Myers, at least in the early drafts, was getting at with his sexual statement. What we would consider unacceptable is coerced, non-consensual, harmful, exploitive sexual acts. So, to repeat, coerced, non-consensual, harmful, exploitive sexual acts. So this deals with... So let's even recap through the big players here. The BDSM community. It's okay because it's consensual. Rape play. So this is when adults pretend to be raping each other because, well, they get a kick off of it, but they're not actually being raped. Again, consensual. Actual rape, not okay. It violates all of these principles. It is coerced, non-consensual, harmful, and an exploitive sexual act.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with those statements.
And coerce, I mean, again, it goes back into, oh, we're soulmates, and all the stuff you were talking about earlier, Snooze, and, harmful, I think it kind of turns into Scurvy's statement of, let's try to be the same age, because, that kind of weird sex can do bad things to a kid mentally.
Well, anytime you get talked into doing something that you initially feel very uncomfortable with, and I think this is one of the reasons why I have a problem with people that push transformance too hard. I mean, it's one thing to tell someone you need to test your boundaries, you need to stretch your boundaries, you need to step outside of your comfort zone. And it's another thing to tell someone, if you don't do this, even though you feel that it's wrong for you, or you have I've got a bad feeling about this. Sorry, fan moment. If you're told you have to do that to be acceptable to your deity or the gods, or acceptable to join or be part of a particular faith or spiritual group, be unacceptable.
Yeah, if you're absolutely petrified of something, it's probably something you shouldn't do. There's a point at which conflict, confrontation, and stress are a good thing, but pushing them to where you break, not always helpful. And pushing somebody into some sort of sex act, whether with a person that they're not comfortable with or in a context they're not comfortable with, is likely traumatizing.
Especially when sorry.
And that's not good anyway.
No. Again, you're getting like all these made of wins. I'm going to owe you a keg and like an entire basket of cookies by the time this is over with.
Yay.
Is when you tack onto it the additional weight of your spirituality, that's evil to me on a whole new level, because you're not just saying you have to do this to be acceptable to another person or a group of people. You have to do this to be acceptable to the deity that has, a say over your spirit, your soul, your eternal life. That's just so freaking dirty pool. It doesn't even, I'm completely intolerant there. I have no tolerance there.
Absolutely. I mean, and I guess I've thought about this a good bit, because my personal path deals a lot with winding up. I wind up being one of the people who pushes, and I have to be able to gauge as to where people can go, and I get pushed in a lot of ways, and there's a point beyond which, if you push somebody too far, all you're gonna do is break them and push them back into this vulnerable state where they're not gonna make any forward motion. And I mean, doing anything manipulative, in a way that, I think this is what's best for you because I'm right and you're wrong and you're stupid and less, experienced than I am, which is, I was listening to one of y'all's episodes talking about intellectual elitism, which totally doesn't exist, but it takes that attitude that I know more than you, therefore you have to listen to me, to an absolutely unreasonable level, where at that point somebody does something like that, and it's that I'm protecting myself. I'm going to punch you in the face and run screaming away from you. Is the appropriate response? I think I lost my train of thought somewhere in there, but
that's okay. You're still beer and cookieing.
Yay! Nice to know that I'm being somewhat productive.
I'm not sure we can give her beer. She sounds like she's 12 years old.
Actually, I'm 21.
Ha!
Oh.
Name your libation.
Ooh.
Wait a minute. Snooze is dyslexic.
Good save, Scurv. Good save. But I don't think it was Snooze who said it was 21.
Nope.
Okay, I'm going to use that later. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery? Something like that?
Something like that. But I have to agree that if you add in somebody's spirituality as a manipulative thing, that violates so many levels of trust and so many levels of just human decency. that I shiver thinking about it.
But I think at the same time, Wiccans in particular just paint a target on themselves again. I mean, and here's a bumper sticker for you, Snooze. Being non-judgmental to the point of being mental. You know, Wiccans have a love with being non-judgmental, and it freaking makes them crazy.
I like it. I agree.
And it can be a hard call sometimes. Like I said, it's how many of us have had somebody judge us because we didn't do things the way they did, and said, I don't want to do that to anybody else. And sometimes it can be a hard call. But to me, the crux of the whole thing is just what Miss was talking about a minute ago. There's a difference between having agreed that part of your training in a faith or a belief system is going to include having your boundaries stretched and stepping outside of your comfort zone, and understanding exactly what that means and what's entailed in it and agreeing to it, and having some yo-yo tell you that if you're going to be a witch, you have to practice drawing down the goddess or you'll never get your priestess wings, which is what this clown that we had here was doing, and probably still is.
Snooze, if you'd have, dropped a Red Wings comment and within a breath of him saying that, I mean, that would have been like total win.
It would have been.
It'd have been wrong, but it'd have been situationally appropriate and win.
I've only exchanged words with him twice. He figured out not only was I too old and not what's the word I'm looking for?
Gullible?
Well, I was going to say nubile, but gullible. Can you combine gullible and nubile into the same word, and we'll have it there? He doesn't tolerate being questioned by females at all, and of course that just went me right down the toilet. So I'm exempt. So we haven't exchanged words more than twice directly. I've written several letters to his group in response to some accusations and that sort of thing. I think part of the thing too that galled me about that whole situation was a foray into the non-pagan part of our community. This guy went to a couple of schools and some local libraries and put pagan and occult books, donated them to the library as an educational thing, and introduced himself as the head of the local pagan community without anybody telling him he could. That would have been enough for me right there to go smack down on him simply for the fact that he was going to various secular authorities that were connected with young adult education and passing himself off as a local authority and spokesperson. But the fact that he was putting these books in the young adult sections of the library with his coven's information and his personal contact information in stickers in the front or back of the book, to me should have been something that someone should have been able to do something about. And a lady that left his group because she decided he was a kook and a freak went to some of the libraries and tried to talk to their directors about this and say, look, this is not cool, this is not a good idea. And it wound up being this weird, if I remember correctly, and it's been a while since I've spoken to her, I'm not sure what the status on it is right now, but it wound up being this sort of weird, how we're always saying, gee, I wish that the non-pagan regular public or whatever would be more accepting, like the thing that's going on in Buncombe County right now with the Bibles and the religious books in schools thing. Mm-hmm. Well, backfire. Somebody decided that this was their effort to be inclusive and be tolerant, and they didn't want to hear it. And the only thing I think that would have changed that situation is if several real community leaders, not just one, not just two, but enough that somebody could actually say, hey, we've got a good cross-section here, had gone as a group and tried to discuss this with whoever's in charge.
Which pagan leaders have historically not done. In fact, it actually made like the front page of pagan news everywhere when Circle Sanctuary and Covered in the Goddess decided to both stand up for the same issue in a coordinated effort.
Yeah, it wound up. We tried to get several people on board with that to do it, and it wound up getting really ugly, and getting several people kind of more. I don't know if ostracized is quite the right word, but we got all the the usual. You're starting a witch war. You're being intolerant, and even after it came out that all these people were telling the truth, and that this guy was a convicted registered sex offender in California, that the whole reason he had come to North Carolina was because North Carolina did not require him to register in North Carolina if he was already registered in California. I believe, if I remember rightly, that was how that works. Anyway, it worked out it was perfectly legal for him to be here and not be registered because North Carolina law permitted it. And we actually got that to complain of this person or say anything about this person could wind up in a libel lawsuit. So in some ways, the actual law itself works against you, even if you're willing to step up and say something or try to do something. Now, that law is the law that makes that possible, or the loophole in North Carolina law that makes that possible, is something that's being looked at right now, or it was as of a couple of months ago when I was, had checked in with somebody. But at the same time, even if you do try to go the civil route or the legal route and go through proper channels, sometimes it may still not work. And I want to say that because of people who do something besides have a major attack of ostrich, and who do try to do something, still coming up, butting their heads against a brick wall. And, I feel like they deserve credit for at least trying. To me, then, the only thing that you can do there is in community communication. Be willing to say, we find this person questionable, we do not approve of them, we do not endorse them. And don't be afraid to say, I'm sorry, I'm intolerant of this person. Sometimes, like you just said, it's the other version of that quote is, don't be so open-minded your brain falls out.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question now. I'm a little in and out of it today, I admit. But I just want to see if I got all the pieces, okay? So, somebody who was a registered sex offender in California. Okay, so do I got that part right so far?
Yep.
Was trying to recruit young teenage girls to a coven he was making, or co-op them or something. Do I got that part correct?
There were a number of underage girls that were told you do not have to have parental permission to participate in our events.
Okay. And the community thought this was a good idea.
Some of them, or a large portion of them, I think absolutely did not. But the combination of being labeled intolerant or judgmental, or starting a witch war, and I cannot express how much I loathe that phrase at this point.
No. I mean,
Well, that's what I'm getting at.
I mean, I understand not acting for a reason, but I mean...
Oh, I don't understand it. I just get
An inaction is still an action, and a passive endorsement over somebody's actions is still an endorsement. Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure I got the score right. So for political reasons, which is what I'm going to call it, they decided, the community decided, that a registered pedophile was the person who they wanted recruiting teenage girls to a coven that they didn't have to tell their parents about. Did I miss anything?
Well, after the story broke about him actually being a convicted sex offender, there were more people that finally stood up and said, "Oh, we've been saying it all along," or "We've been da-da-da." But we've still got a core of people that are still saying, "Well, we need to be forgiving," or "We need to heal this person," which that's a whole nother ball game to get on, about people that feel it's the community's responsibility
We
to
need
heal.
to heal him. I'm going to heal it with my vagina.
Ah, right.
Dave, you've generated plenty of audio bites this episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so if this...
Snooze, you need to
Yeah.
post-produce this one. I'd like to see what you can string together with them.
Okay,
Oh, God, you don't want me to go there. What we wound up with, he applied for an info booth at PPD the last year that Miles and I were involved in the organization. Miles was a local coordinator. I was just the idiot that gets stuff done. And Miles wanted to refuse it, and there was an argument with the other coordinators about whether or not we could refuse it, and they finally overruled him and said, "No, we have to accept him." And he came and he showed up, and it was creepy and it was weird, and his group wasn't allowed to communicate with anyone and wasn't supposed to leave their booth. And in between that and next year, Miles and I, kind of quit doing PPD because we've been doing it for 4 years, and we decided we needed a break, and there's plenty of other perfectly good people, that were interested. And the next year, in between that, this story broke, and several people did say, "Okay, we've been saying this all along. We weren't liars. Do you believe us now?" And some people were saying, "Okay, we suspected as much, but we didn't want to say anything because we were afraid we'd get sued for libel or slander, da-da-da-da-da, or we'd be, accused of being intolerant, or, that kind of thing." There's still, and they told him no on the next PPD event, because he actually came up after he had publicly admitted to what he was being accused of, smile and a wink, and came up and applied for a booth again, and also wanted to know if he could do children's activities. And they told him no. There was a contingent of the community, not the whole community, good grief, we don't have a whole community, there's a whole bunch of little communities that all kind of spot back and forth and overlap. And we had a couple in the community that still came up and said, "You're being judgmental, you're being too harsh, we need to learn how to forgive, we need to grow from love, you should be, this person should be, welcome in the community because you're being too judgmental." And that's not just being open-minded, that's that thing where your brain falls out of your ear, rolls across the floor, and gets so much lint on it, it's indistinguishable from an old sweater.
Okay, now, there's a thought exercise I like to do, okay?
And that's pretty much where it's at this point.
And, I really do like my thought exercises, and we're going to assume that maybe these people have a valid point, okay? So, okay, hear me out with this.
I was laughing at the editorial comment there.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the steps for what would be needed for this guy to participate in the pagan community, but for us people who are somewhat phobic around pedophiles to be comfortable.
Okay, step one, we don't put them near children.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, dude, if you're listening, I will. If you're willing to admit that you're sick, I'm willing to accept the fact that you have an illness, but you need to go cold turkey.
Yeah.
There you
Yeah,
go.
don't put me in front of a donut and soda buffet, okay?
Well, if you go by the guidelines that they give people who have been sex offenders, pedophile sex offenders, that they have a set of guidelines that they go by that are meant to help keep them out of trouble if they truly want to not get into trouble. And I know a guy who was going through this, and it was about, when I'm not around here, this is somewhere else. He is meticulous about following his guidelines. He is rarely ever on his own alone. He does not go certain places, especially, not without a good friend or some other people with him. There are certain things he simply does not do. There are movies he does not go see. And he has a list of people that he can pull his cell phone out 24/7 and call as people he can touch base with and talk to right then. And they have agreed to do this, to be this support for him. He is a person who has a problem, who is handling his problem with as much responsibility as is humanly possible. And I applaud him for that. It can be done, like you said, if you treat it just like any other illness or difficulty. That's not what's happening here. And the biggest thing with anybody that's going through anything like that is transparency. And that's not what's happening with this person. And that's not what the people that are proposing tolerance are saying should be done. They're doing the uber linty, fluffy magic bullet of love.
Yeah.
And it don't work. And that's irresponsible.
Well, irresponsible is also knowing this guy is a pedophile and not doing a damn thing about it. And all of us, you know what it is? It annoys me so much because I see it all the time in political elections. As soon as somebody else goes out on a limb and actually says, something about something that's uncertain, it's like, oh yeah, I'll take a side on that. And then that decision is made and we find out if it's good or bad. Then all the other guys step up. I was like, oh yeah, I was for this all along. Yeah. It's like, no. You didn't have the balls to step up and say something about it. Therefore, you're a piece of shit.
You're trying to ride on somebody else's coattails and look better just because somebody else is willing to jump out and stick their neck out for it. Mm-hmm. And that just makes you a user.
People don't want to be outside their comfort zones. They don't want to fess up that they might be passively endorsing rape of little children.
Yeah. Well, and the thing of it too, I agree with you on all of that. I am going to toss in what I said earlier. Right now, North Carolina law is technically on his side. He has complied with North Carolina law. And that's why I'm saying, yeah, okay, fine. Somebody can threaten somebody with a libel lawsuit or a slander lawsuit. I understand people being afraid of that too. But you don't have to say, he screws 5-year-olds. You can say, I do not endorse this person. I do not condone their personal practice, and I will not recommend them to anyone. And if enough people are saying that, that's not slander. That's not libel. Anybody with an ounce of gray matter, if they keep hearing that over and over again, somebody is going to say, maybe I need to be wary of this, or maybe I need to really, really, really watch, look, listen, and do my homework before I trust this person or get really involved with this group.
Yeah, I mean, people develop reputations in various communities. Why do you think the Asatru are such pains in their theology, when it comes to reputation being honorable, family name, and all that? It's because it means something to people. I've gotten a reputation for being interesting, which is code word for, yeah, I'm not afraid to speak my mind. At the same time, some other members of the pagan community have gotten reputations, independent of this show, for stirring up the drama in the community. That reputation precedes them, though, and they have, they have to deal with the consequences of that reputation. But I think what we're running into here is a combination of people that don't want to admit that they have been wrong with nobody's going to tell me what to do. I'm pagan type of pagan. You know, it's like, I'm pagan, therefore you have no right to tell me what to do. It's like
Pagans who are pagan for the sake of rebellion?
yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Seems that way.
Nonconformity for its own sake.
But it's almost like we're a bunch of freaking narcissists here. You know,
Yeah.
we're not looking out for the community good. We're looking out for ourselves. And I mean, that's, you know, it's good. You have more experience with narcissism. You can fill in the blanks.
No, I'd rather not. But I'm kind of functional right now. Can we leave it that way?
Okay.
I was just thinking, you know, and I admit when it comes to the whole community involvement, I'm not exactly the most active member. I sit on my fat ass. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoy my reading and all that stuff. Every once in a great while I'll show up to an event, run into certain authors and restaurants, but
Silver Raven Wolf.
fuck you. But
By the way, if anybody out there can literally make me a Silver Raven Wolf, please contact me, Dave@PaganCenterPodcast.com. I would totally buy that shit.
Doesn't matter what it's made out of?
As long as it's colored silver, I don't care.
Okay, tag me when we're done. I got Sculpey.
All right.
I got Sculpey. I got paint. Sorry.
I'm already prepared to get even with Scurry for the next thing he's doing to me.
All that being said, and I know I fail at it, but I do try. Be the change I'd like to see in the community. So, I was just thinking, it's like, you know, just to recap, because I admit I got a little bit obsessed earlier, but I like trying to figure out ways not to make the same mistakes again. So I'm going to attempt to identify a red flag. So, we got this guy who's actively trying to recruit teenage girls to a coven. Is that a red flag?
Yes.
Okay.
I see flaggage.
Only if he's not a teenage boy.
Right. That was.
Yeah, we're hitting on 50-ish here. I'll remind me when the
even
the
if he is a
podcast is
teenage,
over, I'll send you a link.
even if he is a teenage boy and he's only recruiting teenage girls, that's still a red flag.
Yeah. Narrow focus.
That's below my level of concern right now. Okay. I accept that I can't really influence that sphere, so we're not. That's parental side there. I actually come to think about it, I'm about on a preschool grade level mentally some days, but let's not go there. So, guy trying to recruit teenage girls for coven is a red flag. Okay, so when we get a red flag, should we maybe use this communication medium known as the person to maybe find out if there's a reason why, if they've raised flags elsewhere? I mean, is that going too far? Or, I mean, is that...
No, I don't think it is.
Okay.
He mentioned that he had been very active in a couple of other communities before he came to North Carolina, and several people tried contacting people in those communities and saying, hey, listen, do you know this guy? Do you remember this guy? And nobody either remembered him or would respond. So, you know, I'm all for vetting. I don't see a problem with it at all.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like time for at least a Google search.
Okay, you used this term there. I didn't understand vetting. What is this term?
Vetting is when you, here, ready for it, say it with me, children, Do your homework. It's when you check somebody out, you go over things, you check their references, that kind of thing, and you see if everything looks up and legit.
Kind of like what an EEO officer does when they get an EEO complaint.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I'm not saying that you have to know what color socks they have on, or, you know, what their grandmother's last name, you know, or grandmother's middle initial is, but you find out, you go ask them, you know, like you're hiring a babysitter. Well, who else have you babysat for? Okay, cool. Can I get in contact with them? And you call these people and say, hey, listen, did this chick do a good job, or did, you know, was this person okay? How did they do? Why are they not babysitting for you anymore, or are they still babysitting for you? The same as you do for a job reference.
Yeah, here, dictionary definition of vetting: to make a careful and critical examination of or investigate someone thoroughly, especially in order to ensure that they are suitable for a job requiring secrecy, loyalty, or trustworthiness.
Okay, so now that we've established this term, can we now explore when it is acceptable and unacceptable to vet and or stalk somebody? I'm going to use these terms interchangeably. I'm trying to work these out a little bit, okay?
I don't think that you need to know what kind of breakfast cereal they have every morning unless they're going to be participating in some type of a nutritional control panel.
Okay.
I think if they're going to be, like, say, okay, if somebody's going to go to work for, you know, Wells Fargo, or, well, let me use a better example of a bank that's not actually inherently dishonest. If somebody's going to go to work for an armored truck, you know, transport company, I think it's perfectly reasonable to do a criminal background check and find out if they've ever been arrested for anything that would be considered, let's call it a conflict of interest. Yeah. This is not unreasonable, but finding out, you know, what they watch on TV every night, whether they are a Packers fan or filling in a blank with another team or something, who cares? That's stalking, or that's poking into somebody's privacy in an area that has nothing to do with the legitimate concern.
Okay, so the topic is legitimate concerns. So, I mean, there was a breakdown somewhere along this line, and I've been involved with a stalker once, so I'm just trying to work a few things out here. Okay, so if you have a legitimate concern for the safety of yourself or others, it is then, we'll say, maybe worth your time to investigate a Google search, or maybe sit there and ask, is this a good idea? I'm just...
Yeah, I mean, and I see where you're going with that. It's one of those look and investigate in things like, you know, has this person, for in this example, has this person done anything objectionable with children before? Well, obviously, by the fact that he's a registered offender in a state, regardless of which state, says yes, or at least he is someone who has a reputation of being dangerous to people. It's, you know, is he targeting people? Has he targeted people before? But knowing, you know, intimate details about his everyday life are not necessarily, you know, anybody's business. There's no need to, you know, find out boxers or briefs. There's more reason to find out, you know, has this person messed with anybody's life in a damaging way?
For the win. It's kind of like, I would call the difference between vetting and actually something that would be considered harassment. The guy I was talking about earlier, he has his control mechanisms and his coping mechanisms in place, and he's working within them. If someone and he like I said, he's 100% transparent. If someone's doing all of these things, or some of these things, and someone still finds the need to follow them around in their car or sit opposite their house with binoculars, marking when they leave and when they come and go and that kind of thing. No, that's almost as crazy as the thing that you say you're trying to vet them for, because you object to. If not, maybe even crazier.
So yeah, that kind of stuff is the job of somebody's PO.
Mhm.
If this person has a parole officer and they're doing something like that, that's their job. That's not the average person's job.
Nah. And to me, if you're not going and working with the parole officer or the someone that falls into that same type of capacity first, you're doing this for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Or you have not thought this through. I'm trying to remember. There's a science fiction series that the culture that it takes place in, the phrase "you have not thought this through" is an insult, is a severe insult. I kind of like that.
Yeah. Rings a bell. I think I've run into that one before. I just can't think of which it is.
If you think of it, let me know, because I've been racking my brain. I need to read it again.
Now I'm stuck on it too.
So we have a bit of a backlog from the chat room conversation. So going back to about 30 minutes ago, what the heck are goddess wings?
Well,
that was a reference to the priestess wings comment, I think.
Priestess wings. What the heck are priestess wings? There we go.
Well, you know how they tell pilots you get your wings when you pass your pilot test?
Okay.
I was just being a smart ass.
Oh, okay. And
Reference to official rank.
Yeah, it's better to be a smart ass than a dumbass. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
I liked it.
One of our listeners has a good input here. He's like, well, we're trying to try to not have sexual predators in our community, yet, as part of the foundation of the pagan community, and the foundation being the books that were written 30-plus years ago. Some of the earlier writings, we had stuff considered to be rape and incest. I mean, the Frosts are the most famous about it, but Aleister Crowley is as well. I mean, they have stuff that, pops up and seems to be considered like rape and incest or dealing with little children.
Well, if I remember right, though, the Frosts went back here a while back and said, some of that stuff was written back when people were trying to accomplish something that we're not trying to accomplish now. And if I remember correctly, they kind of sort of said, look, just the heck with that, throw that crap out. I may be wrong about that, but I think I remember reading that somewhere. So
I know it was in the case of Crowley, it was just code words for magic because, well, raping little children was considered more tolerable than talking about magic directly.
Yeah, well, Crowley was a sideshow.
Well, yeah.
Sorry, but he was an overgrown frat boy.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to use him as a standard for anything except what not to do, unless you want to wind up confused and sticky in a jail cell in Tijuana.
Confused and sticky and jail cell in Tijuana.
That took you a minute, huh?
That's a very bad combination.
My point. And I do have one. I don't know. I think I'd actually pay money to see Crowley wake up confused and sticky in a jail cell in Tijuana. I wonder if he spoke Spanish.
Cool.
Alright, Snooze, I'm not understanding where you're trying to get at on this hypocrisy point that you have here in the show notes.
Huh? Hang on.
the one labeled hypocrisy.
Oh, you expect me to remember something? Jeez, buddy. Let me
So
see.
you were following along.
Thingammy. I was already down at the bottom because I was looking to see if I had put the right link in. Oh, okay. Okay. Can we go back to that now, or are we past all of that? Or
No.
Okay, just for the explanation of it, the reason I put that in there, and if you can tell by my voice, I'm kind of crappy right now because I've been, hoarse and stuff, and cough syrup makes me stupid. The thing that I was thinking about there was the fact, how many times have you heard pagans denounce some of the fringe might be a good word. Fringe might be a good applicable broad spectrum word. Fringe monotheist sects or cults or groups that have attitudes about sex, and especially where women are concerned, that we all consider to be unhealthy, like Quiverful and some of the other extremely fringe patriarchal groups that we really look at them and we say, okay, that's wrong. I don't care if it's your religious belief. I don't care if it's your your culture. It's wrong.
So basically the stuff that goes against contemporary women's rights.
Yeah, or really, honestly, intelligent handling of, your physical health, period. But then when you turn around and someone pops up, like, okay, I just blanked on the guy's name. The guy that's got okay, I'm having
the guy who has the thing.
I'm having a complete scene on here. He's in jail right now, out in the Midwest and everything. He's the one that's got the patriarchal.
Oh, the guy with the Mormon compound.
Yeah, he's got
FLDS.
like he married 14 and 15-year-old girls, which married all that is an excuse to have sex with them. That wasn't really a marriage thing. He's in jail right now, and some of his followers are raising Cain because they're being religiously discriminated against. But one of the reasons they even found out what was going on is because there were women and men that have escaped from the group and said this is wrong. I've heard pagans condemn him for marrying, underage girls and having so he could have sex with them and fathering children on them. And then turn around and see something like what, the fruitcake that we were dealing with, or somebody else.
Well, don't you understand? It's okay if he wants to have sex with 14-year-olds as long as he doesn't compel them to marry him.
Right. It's kind of like, okay, give me some common ground here, Twinkie, because your stock's plummeting. You kind of have to apply it across the board. If you're going to turn your nose up at somebody else for something that you find unhealthy or highly questionable, then you can't turn around and play ostrich on, with your own stuff. And that's my opinionated judgmentalness. But I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that just kind of screams hypocrisy to me. I mean, you can't say, oh, they're wrong, and this is just wrong on a basic level, but when we do it, it's okay. And if you tell us we're wrong, you're just being discriminatory. And I don't know, it kind of makes me think of that whole thing that a lot of that I've seen around, where you wind up with people who are more intolerant of intolerance, and anytime you start criticizing or questioning anything they do, either within your own community or in others, well, you're just being intolerant. You just need to shut up because you don't know what you're talking about. You're being a bigot, when they turn around and start arguing about the same thing in other communities. When I have a basic level, core level objection to something, I'm going to say something about it. I'm not being bigoted. I'm having a brain and a conscience. Excuse me.
But you know that falls outside of groupthink, and we can't have that in a pagan community. People can't think for themselves; they'll just get ostracized.
Because that's asking people to be logical. And we can't have people thinking, regardless of what we like to say we promote.
Yeah, if you want to be in our pagan group, you gotta be a good Christian. Don't question us.
Think for yourself, but do exactly what I say.
Exactly. Think for yourself as long as you're thinking like me. So how do we expunge Penn State syndrome from the pagan community? You know.
Well, honestly, I don't see it being fixed until we go 2 generations down the road. Because once we get past the constant fear of Christians coming down on us, it's not going to happen.
Well, I mean, the constant fear of Christians coming down on us for most pagans, not all, but certainly most, is self-induced. And I think it's time for the pagan community in large to realize this. Now, granted, I realize it drives up ratings on certain websites and drives traffic to constantly bash on the Christians. But be smarter than that. You know, one thing that you gotta do before you fix the problem is identify if you have a problem. Are you in a situation where you're in a group and you can't question the leader that they might have done something wrong? Are you in a situation where you don't feel like doing anything to a person because they've contributed a large sum of money to the group or its causes? You know, or are you in a situation where you're doing bad things and passively supporting something because that's what they told you to do?
Yeah.
Cult evaluation danger frame.
And the worst one that bothers me the most, and this is the common one I see in general circles, is, but he didn't violate any of the rules. There is no rule against raping 5-year-olds. Therefore, he didn't break any of the rules. What's the problem?
Just because there's no explicit rule about it doesn't mean that it's okay.
Well, you see, I tend to view rules as sort of kind of like a bunch of envelopes, okay? Now, you got your group's rules, and outside your group's rules is you got probably your county and your state and your country's rules. I mean, I understand it's different in different countries, but if you're breaking a law of the land, most likely you should probably evaluate how applicable that law of the land is to your group's rules. I mean, if your group supports that law of the land, whether they go out of their way to do it or whether it's just sort of one of them unspoken things like, yeah, you know, I think children should be sacred. Dave, shut up. But
just like a Satanist.
Here's one to toss in. To me, and again, you got stuff where somebody slips through the cracks, where they find loopholes that allow them to get away with something. If one of the reasons that we're susceptible to this kind of thing is because a lot of PHA or pagan, heathen, alternative, what have you, faiths operate outside of the mainstream rules, the monotheist, the type of monotheistic structures that people have been accustomed to. If we're operating outside of those rules, then why do we have to play by the rules for what we consider unacceptable? Yeah, okay, fine. You slip through the cracks as far as civil law goes. That doesn't mean you slip through the cracks as far as our rules go. If we can make our own rules for one thing, or use another group of rules that is not mainstream, why can't we do it across the board? Am I nuts there, or is that workable?
It makes sense. I mean, it falls kind of falls under the self-policing thing, and this whole we have to accept everybody mindset just goes against keeping the creepers out of our community. I mean, if you've got somebody who's doing something that is basically objectionable, I mean, even if it's, you know, if it's illegal, and they don't get caught, that doesn't mean it goes away. It doesn't mean they didn't do it. And, there's that whole concept of consequences. Just because the law didn't catch you doesn't mean we're going to let you stay. But with this whole, we have to accept everybody, and we need to be forgiving, and blah, 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 you wind up where people say, no, there's no consequences for this. They didn't get caught by the law, and therefore it's okay. Do what now?
Okay, I got an idea for a test. Now, I believe in using resources. And Dave can be an asshole sometimes, so here is the test. Okay? Now, pretend Dave is going to have 3 TV cameras pointed at him from 3 major stations. Okay? And the test is, for whatever this person's doing and has done, if this information was put on a note card and handed to Dave, would you be upset at the world knowing? If the answer is yes, maybe it's time to do a little bit of evaluation. Now, what does everybody else think about this test?
Please don't worship me. And please don't be asking me these questions after I'm dead or transported to another plane of existence.
We're not talking about something like explosive flatulence or hemorrhoids here, are we? I want to be humane. I want to be humane.
If you wouldn't do it in front of your grandmother, maybe you should think about what you're doing.
That's a better qualifier.
See, if more people were thinking during sex, they would enjoy it a lot more.
Okay, Dave, going back to the earlier topic, the incident that sparked this. You have 30, let's pretend you have 30 seconds here on CNN. Make a headline, please.
This person does not represent anything that Wicca believes. Holy crap, why do you guys keep saying that this is what Wiccans believe? You guys are totally out of touch with what we believe. If you knew even the first little tenets of our religion, you would realize this is totally contradictory to everything we believe.
Why don't you people do your research? Research should override sensationalism, but it doesn't.
Nope, not even in pagan media. Well, some pagan media.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if they do it right, some of the stuff or whatever they could probably come up with that is absolutely true would be perfectly sensational enough. They don't need to dredge up all of this fake crap.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's French for, I don't need drugs. I see enough weird shit when I'm dead cold sober.
My life is weird enough as it is. I don't need your crazy. I don't need your imagination. My life is strange anyway.
But I think one problem is, again, and I'm going to harp on it because people don't seem to be getting it into their head yet. People deify pagan leaders as if they're perfect and infallible, and you know what, they're even less fallible than the gods, because the gods have their issues, but my leader is perfect. No! These people are just as human as you are, and they make mistakes, and just like any other human, the more mistakes you let them make, the bigger the mistakes they're going to try to get away with, even if it's unintentional, like someone doing dishes while doing an interview for a podcast that's centered on paganism.
I didn't do that.
The religion that scurvy practices.
You mean that moody guy named Joe?
Yeah. See, I think what happened is you said you were not here, normal, here, so many times, they can't identify your religion anymore.
Oh, I actually talked about my spirituality a little bit openly today. I scared a lot of people.
Well, duh, you're practically a Satanist.
Oh,
Wait a
fuck
minute, I
you.
thought you... I thought you had agreed to become a snoozist, man. What's up with that?
I ain't becoming anything. My terms is I'm going to have a relationship with a deity or two, and if they don't kill me, life will be good.
Okay, more cookies for me.
I mean, when you're dealing with individuals, it's very easy to get into the ad hominem attacks. And to be honest, if you're going to be doing the investigation, vetting, stalking, whatever you want to call it of a person, keep it to the facts. Keep it to what you can find, what you can verify. And the verification part is a lot more important than you might think. Too many people do stupid things because of information that wasn't verified, such as rumor. And one thing I just want to re-emphasize is if you're keeping quiet about something publicly, like the situations news mentioned earlier, where, yeah, we know this bad guy is in our group soliciting females to join a group and he likes to bang young females. Yeah, you're passively supporting this person and their actions. And if you believe in all that karma crap, well, that's on you too.
Yeah, tacit consent is still consent.
But I think the first thing we need to do is make sure, yeah, we got individuals, but I think even if you don't think you have a problem, or if you genuinely don't have a problem, you should still make sure your community is not a safe haven for pedophiles. And the first step towards doing that is establish a relationship with law enforcement, no matter how much you don't want to. Do it. Pagans, we do weird stuff. At least like how it looks to normal people, okay? We do weird stuff. And if law enforcement sees weird stuff, they're going to think the worst. Make sure that they're somewhat informed about what the weird stuff is that we do, and that we're not trying to sacrifice babies or rape them or anything like that.
You know, on a slightly related tangent, there was a rumor where I worked for a while that I was a baby raping Satanist.
Oh, lovely.
My retort to that was, could you please find a baby? I mean, it's gonna sound strange, but I mean, the rumor was going around that I was doing this. It's like, you know, there's also been other rumors about me, but normally it comes down to one thing. It's like, could you locate the dead body and or find a person that's missing?
Nobody, no crime.
Dude, your job description is just way too diverse.
Pixar didn't happen.
Yeah, well, I got off to a rough start there. My first 10 minutes on a job, I was informed how Jesus Christ would help me do my job.
What?
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's a heck of a perk.
Was your job involving, hammering of stuff into other stuff? Because nailing Jesus through a cross would definitely help with that.
Well, he was a carpenter. I mean, I'm thinking, yeah, if he knows how, because I know so many guys that can't miter accurately. If he can do it, get his ass on the job and be grateful for it, because I've messed that up myself. So if you can get him, that's a perk, man. Because, I mean, he did have that whole no possessions thing, so you might not have to pay him. You might just have to feed him lunch. I could see him being good with that.
He'd even bring his own bread. And fish.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now,
You could
just
actually be looking at the perfect coworker there.
Now, on an earlier topic, now just keep this much in mind. I spent the last half-decade, and it's thankfully most of the worst offenders have retired, working with a lot of fundamentalist Christians. Okay, by and large, yeah, well, they're annoying, yes, but when they get on the Bible thumping, but really, they're pretty obvious, and unless it's absolutely necessary, take appropriate measures. If And looking back at it, if I had it to do over again, I probably would have been better off saying, maybe I should have took that other option. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here. Alrighty.
Post scurvy silence. Take a drink.
Cricket, cricket,
Bye.
cricket, cricket.
Hey, I think I'm doing very well considering the 3 hours sleep I had last night.
That works. We were talking about a minute ago, Dave, about developing a relationship with law enforcement and, people being afraid to do that.
Yep.
That I can definitely understand because I've lived in a county where one of the local law enforcement entities, not all of them, but one of them were the biggest criminals in the county.
Yeah, I think we all live in a county like that.
Well, this is like, this was even exceptional compared. I felt like I was in a movie, a really badly written B movie at some points, but it can happen and can be done if you just kind of try a little bit. Like and I need to do a blog entry on this one. I'm running really behind, but there's a police chief in Virginia, fabulously nice guy. He and his officers were gifted with a occult crime solving seminar by Don freaking Reimer back, before he was a zombie corpse.
Yay, zombie corpse! Let's piss on his grave.
Go for it. But the thing of it is the officers are required to have X number of hours of, continuing education, and somebody in the higher-ups booked him to be their educational opportunity to satisfy their employment requirement. And I talked to the police chief and said, look, somebody did a blog entry about it where they were really pissed off, and they had written the police chief and told him what a jerk he was and all this kind of thing. And I was like, that don't work. This guy is not the person that arranges all of that. And I tagged him. I said, look, I know this is not your call, but one thing that I would like to do is offer something for you to compare to that's actually us saying who we are, not some guy that's been making mega bucks keeping people scared since the 80s. And I don't think he was very pleased with Mr. Reimer's presentation or attitude either. And he agreed that I could send him some material. I sent him a copy of Carol Lane's Law Enforcement Guide to Wicca, and I believe Diana Paxson's Ossetry for Beginners. I picked stuff that was really easy, easy to understand, 101. And of course, I think every law enforcement agency should have a copy of Carol Lane's book. And he was very willing to take a look at them, and was, found them interesting, found them informative, and according to him, did not immediately throw them in the trash and set the trash can on fire. And I mean, you can do it. Yeah, you're gonna get somebody that's gonna say, ew, icky, or send you a bunch of tracts through the mail, or there's always gonna be somebody like that. But if you hit on it enough, you find the ones that aren't, and you got to get the ball rolling somewhere. And this guy was fantastic. He was very polite. He was very open-minded.
Something to keep in mind for National Pagan Donate a Pagan Book Day.
And, donating to schools and things is fantastic. But for my money, I would rather be educating our law enforcement officers, because schools, you're dealing with minors, you're dealing with kids who may come into conflict with what their parents believe, and I don't think that's really fair to put a kid through. World religions classes are good. I encourage those, but again, you're dealing with kids here, minors. I'd rather deal with, in a lot of ways, with our law enforcement, because they're the ones that get stuck in situations where people can get killed, or somebody who kills people can go free, all based on the knowledge they have and having to make split-second decisions in bad places.
Well, I mean, one thing that's very unfortunate is that there is a pagan law enforcement / first responders organization, the Officers of Avalon, at officersofavalon.com.
Excellent, yeah.
but there's no way to really. I mean, their website hasn't been updated since 2 years ago. And, you know, if it wasn't for the fact that I just happen to know that Peter Diving is the current president of this organization, I'd have no real way of contacting his organization. I've tried contacting them in the past, and everything just goes dead.
Hasn't it been a while since he's been on, or since we've rickrolled him?
Yeah, he's on an RV tour of the entire country at the moment.
Alrighty, we're going to have to invite him on as the president of the
Officers of Babylon.
officer. Yeah, have to do that.
But, I mean, it'd be awesome if Pagans could work with Pagan law enforcement that just happens to be local. You know, but apparently that's not what they're looking to do. I mean, and all this does, you know, Pagan law enforcement isolating themselves from the remainder of the Pagan community like this, that just compounds the whole Pagans don't want to work with law enforcement issue. Pagans would be a lot more, you know, willing to work with law enforcement if they could work through a liaison that was a law enforcement officer that just happened to be local and represents whatever law enforcement agency they need to get in contact with.
I'm willing to chalk that one up to possibly having to kind of hammer something out or whatever. I mean, it's as much difficulty as the regular Pagan community has with getting a consensus on anything. That would trying to put something like that together to me would be extremely daunting, and I'm willing to chalk part of that up to that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way we can wait on the Officers of Avalon to transform into a useful organization for
what I'm getting at is I'm willing to chalk that up to work in progress, partially because if I was in charge of it, it would be flapping like a gaping fish outside of its fishbowl. But it's...
And I entirely understand issues of confidentiality. They don't want their names known, but if you look at their newsletter, they give all magical names. So...
Well, again, so does Kerr Kalane, but he can still be reached as a consultant.
Yep.
And that's another avenue. I'd be curious actually to see more about the possibility of individual police officers that are on part of various law enforcement entities that were able to be out, possibly being referrals for their departments. And again, I know that that's always dicey and that's always messy. I got a friend that's a police officer that has been told he is not to wear his Thor's hammer anywhere where anybody can see it, that they can identify him as a police officer. And part of that's that whole Southern Poverty Law Center thing about hate symbols. Part of it is just the fact that he's in the blasted South in a small town.
But the part of it is also skinheads really like that symbol.
Well, that's what the Southern Poverty Law Center has issued some statements saying that that they have become better educated about Asatru and heathen symbols, but they are still included in a lot of the hate group notifications. So that's a work in progress too. That's going to take several years to happen. That's one of the reasons why I say that I can see it being a work in progress.
Which again goes back to the fact that Pagan leaders need to go ahead, get off the butt, and talk directly to law enforcement.
Yeah, try building individual relationships instead of just having one or two entities to go through, because even if everybody is up and running like you'd like for them to be, you can only do so much at a time.
Yeah, I remember when I was in college. I mean, first of all, it's fairly well known I ran the Pagan group, and secondly, you know, I've been around a lot of people who had to report crime, so I had already had a relationship with local law enforcement.
Well, there you go. Make it part. I mean, to me, that's part of community building that fosters communication, fosters understanding, and also helps stop things like the things that we're talking about.
Well, I mean, sometimes, yeah, I mean, when we think police, we're always thinking crime, somebody getting in trouble, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes people just call up the police for the weirdest thing, like, hey, I saw a guy walking down Main Street with a 4-foot broadsword. Do you guys know anything about why the guy's doing that? And
there you go.
And, you know, it's the most innocent thing because maybe, you know, the local pagan group had, you know, a demonstration of ritual tools that night, and that person's 4-foot broadsword just happened to be a ritual tool. And the police just want to know, WTF, mate, what's going on? This is something we need to be worried about.
Or maybe you were a bunch of us Ren Fair leftovers that were out at a lovely bar and grill in Charlotte in full costume and decided to go planking in downtown Charlotte one night in full costume, and the police thought our outfits were fantastic. But that's that community building thing. We also have a perception that goes along with what you were saying earlier about not trusting outsiders, sticking to our own, that we don't live in our communities as pagans, and we do. We use the post office, we use the schools, we use the grocery stores, the gas stations, the dentist. We also have, the police department is also part of that community. And if you're going to be a positive pagan presence, or heathen presence, PHA, whatever you want to call it, you're going to have to live in your community and be part of your community. And having a relationship with the police department is part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's another thing that helps stop some of what we've been talking about from happening.
Yeah.
Is having that open communication.
Yeah, if somebody's trying to join your group to do pot or rape kids, the second they find out you got a good relationship with the local police department, they're going to back off.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's just a matter of risk versus reward with these people, and risk becomes too great, they go away.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, one thing we need to keep in mind, you know, with organizations that choose not to do this and choose to passively endorse these type of things, is don't support them at all. No donations, don't even go to their meetings, don't even attend their rituals. Organizations are run by people, and, you know, people can mess things up. But, you know, one thing you might want to consider with an organization is perhaps leaving some contact info and be like, hey, call me up when things change. But usually what happens with organizations in the pagan communities, they don't change. They just dissipate into the ether. But, I mean, would you rather have no community or a community that passively supports raping 5-year-olds? And when all else
I seem to remember this topic. Where did I hear it before? Some pagans who used to be Catholic mentioned something about, yeah, that's why they left Catholicism. I'm sorry, did I say that?
But, you know, if you can't work through the back channels, you can keep it discreet, and the organization doesn't want to do anything, you know, it's almost an obligation at that point to make your opinion known. Now, you gotta make sure that you're not being excessively dramatic, not being slanderous or libelous, but at the same time, it is important to communicate, hey, something is not right here. Am I going completely bonkers here, or are other people thinking the same thing about this person? And you can refer to a person without referring to them by name or being so specific that everybody who doesn't even know this person would know who they are. I mean, but the thing is, you want to draw attention to the problem, and, you know, take any calm feedback you get seriously. You know, sometimes we're wrong. You know, we are people too. We screw things up. Be ready to accept if you're indeed incorrect about something. At the same time, just because you have doubt doesn't mean you shouldn't sound the warning bell. And
Well, that.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, dude. I thought I was muted.
We can edit that out. It's all good. But if all else fails, I mean, one thing we kind of alluded to earlier, especially Snooze, make sure you establish relations with the community so that they know that this is not what paganism or your specific religious tradition is about. Make it very clear to them. In fact, if you could round up a small group of people that happen to be leaders in the area or seen as leadership figures, that would be better. But you need to make it known that there are some people that disagree with this nut job before they do something stupid, because after the fact, obviously everyone comes out of the closet and is like, oh yeah, I don't like that guy. But before the fact, just let it be known, hey, I don't think some of the things this guy's doing is kosher. Just be aware that this does not reflect our belief structure.
Ounce of prevention's better than a pound of cure.
And one thing to keep in mind is, especially if you're dealing with news agencies, but this kind of applies to a lot of places too. You know, if you're speaking anonymously, you're going to need 3 or more people to speak anonymously before they take it to be credible. Otherwise, you'll have to speak without anonymity before they take it seriously. Basically, you just don't like every nut job in the world yanking their chain anonymously. And worst case scenario, I mean, go full force, expose the group. Yeah, it's a significant short-term loss, but you're exchanging it for a long-term gain of making it very well known that this is not what we stand for. And we will out people that pull this crap in our community.
Yeah, there's a difference between, you know, taking and outing somebody for who's in a bad situation for stupid reasons, and outing somebody because they're going to hurt somebody and you're going to get caught in the backlash.
Mm-hmm. And Snooze, I'll leave the A, B, C, D, E, F to you.
I think we already hit it, didn't we?
A few times, but we never really quite explained what it is.
Oh, okay. Isaac Bonewitz, which most people are probably going to have an idea who he is. If not, Google Isaac Bonewitz.
Isaac Bonewitz previously made an appearance on the show by means of me making fun of him for constantly trying to move to the most expensive part of the country to reduce his medical bills.
Oh, Isaac was probably still is a character, but he left
No, he died a while ago.
Well, honey, I don't think that's going to stop him from being a character. Think about it.
No, I think he's still messing with Circle Century till this day.
There you go.
Yep.
The man left us with some really, really good stuff, and one of them is what he called the ABCDEF, easy to remember, or the Advanced Bonewitz Cult Danger Evaluation Frame. And you can look it up on his and Faye's, which Phaedra's still running the CyberHinge website.
Mm-hmm.
It's www.neopagan.net, and it's on there. Or if you just Google ABCDEF, it comes up, or ABCDEF. It's a series of questions, and you answer, you know, with what you're looking at or what you're examining applies on a scale of 1 to 10. And if you start scoring really up there, then you are looking at something that technically would be considered dangerous as regards to a spiritual, you know, group. And you can also apply it to an individual. I got a friend who is an escapee from the Quiverful movement, and someone showed it to her, and she had been struggling with feeling that what she was in was very wrong for a long time. And this was something that was cohesive, concise, to the point, and easy to map, that she could say, oh my, this is what I'm looking at. And it was like a light bulb going off. There are law enforcement and FBI and other similar types of agencies that have used it to evaluate and examine various groups, and it's pretty effective. And the other the really nice thing about it is it's free. You can go online, pull the whole thing, and print it off.
Mm-hmm.
And if you plug somebody that you've joined a group, and the leader or somebody like that's got some authority is giving you the heebies, and you're going, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't sound right, plug it into that and see what you get. And if you get enough on there that you're really looking at something kind of scary, leave skid marks. Run. Haul butt. And be proud of yourself for doing it. If you come back later and you find out you were wrong, that's not a problem, because you can always come back later and say, hey, I was wrong about this. But you get sucked into something dangerous, you might not get that opportunity. When in doubt, chicken out.
There's nothing wrong with being cautious, and I think that, I don't know, a lot of people think that, you know, that level of caution is, you know, second guessing and goes against that whole trust thing that we're supposed to have. And it's like, well, again, you know, trust yourself. If you choose to, trust your deities. Don't trust every other idiot who to be looking out for you, because they're not.
I'm going to use that at some point because I like the fact what you just brought up there. When you hear people with perfect love, perfect trust, that's always assumed to be with the other people in the, you know, that's kind of a Wiccan witchcraft thing.
Yeah, but that's with your
is
deities and your relationship with your deities and yourself, not other people.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, the whole perfect love, perfect trust thing is a byword for some groups that you should be able to trust the other people that you're in circle with. You should be able to trust them not to, you know, to treat you as a coven family, you know, the family of coven.
I mean, that's positive only thinking, and that's just, you know, again, we have a whole episode listing all the bad crap that entails, but at the end of the day, I can't trust everybody in a ritual, people I never met, to do the ritual correctly. I got to be watching out for myself while I'm participating.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at there. I can understand and endorse the perfect trust thing, as in, if you're in a small group, the people that I know that employ that, they're all in small groups. None of the groups I can think of that are doing that are over maybe, you know, 8, 9, 10 people. But you don't usually hear someone saying that also means trust yourself. So, good one, like that. More beer and cookies.
Yay. Yeah, I always take the perfect love and perfect trust thing to not be something, you know, you have to trust people. It's one of those, think about this before you do it. If you don't feel like you can trust the people in the ritual and that trust and your misgivings about them and their ability or trustworthiness or whatsoever are enough to make you doubt, then don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I've always interpreted that phrase in Wicca, in Wiccan context, to be, are you doing the right thing, and are you doing it for the right reason?
Yeah. And can you actually handle the task?
Mm-hmm.
I've gone into, you know, environments and planned to go to rituals and whatnot, where I've wound up in the same room with the people and gotten a bad vibe of somebody and said, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I'm just not comfortable with that. And if somebody reacted, well, you should be comfortable, you're just being judgmental and not open-minded, I was like, well, you know what? I'm just not gonna come back. And that's for me a self-preservation concept. And I don't think a lot of people, you know, it seems like if you think in self-preservation terms, people just think you're being judgmental. And I'm like, you know, maybe I am being judgmental, but I'm making a judgment for myself. I'm making a judgment to take care of myself, and if I think you people are nut jobs, then I'm not gonna stick around. And I'm going, you know, it's that concept of, you know, spread the word of how people act in contexts like that. That's how you get people who are going to be manipulative, who are going to try to take advantage of people out of where they're going to do harm, is make people aware of it. And if you don't make people aware of it, then you're kind of consenting for them to be there. It's that same whole issue. If you're not going to say anything, then you're kind of tacitly responsible for anything that person does, because you didn't make people aware.
Pretty much. We've beaten the topic to death.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I just want to recap on something earlier.
All right, final boss. Let's go.
Okay. Just making sure, because, I mean, sometimes I notice people have trouble doing certain things sometimes, and I can't understand how come they have trouble. So I like making checklists, and sometimes they're really helpful. So the time when you should invest and do your homework is when your own safety or someone else's safety is on the line, correct? I mean,
Start.
so just making sure, correct?
Yeah, more or less.
So let's say hypothetically you got this person who's giving you a weird vibe and all that stuff. Is that then a point in time where maybe a casual inspection of their activities and such might be in order?
That's my rule of thumb. If
Okay.
if I get weird vibes, if I feel threatened or imposed upon, I kind of look in on that person, especially if they're acting that way to more than just me.
Okay. So, the correct response when something feels off or something seems off is maybe examine it before dismiss it. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm got autism or something at the moment, but I'm just...
I understand.
Because Snooze described a whole lot of failing. Honestly, if I hadn't spent the last 5 years where I spent the last 5 years, I wouldn't be able to understand it at all. And right now I can understand how it can happen. I just still don't understand how it could happen, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, my attitude, to echo Snooze, do your homework. you can't, knowledge is power. You can't do anything about it if you don't know what's going on.
At the same time, most people that are pagan do not realize they are participating in a community that is very conducive to this behavior.
Yeah. A lot of people think, it's okay, we're all going to look out for each other.
We're pagans, we're better than those Christians. We would never sexually assault our children. Oh,
Yeah.
wait, never mind. We're condoning the same thing all over again.
No, we're looking out for each other. We're looking out for the wrong people. Just because we've been burned by, interactions with law
That guy
enforcement.
over there loves everyone, especially the young girls.
Yeah. And just because you've had a bad experience once doesn't mean that's going to be the rule everywhere. That's painting everybody with one brush. And yeah, you're going to get some people who are just going to look at you sideways and not do anything about it, or take everything you're saying in some negative light. But you can't make allies in any community, whether it's interfaith, law enforcement or what have you, without putting yourself out there. And you got to talk to people to find people who are going to help you out.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, one thing I brought up a long time ago is, if you're going to be a pagan leader, especially for a local pagan group, be ready to go to jail for your group. And if you cannot do that, then you are not ready to be a pagan leader.
Because you're going to be held responsible.
And you gotta put yourself out there. If you're not putting yourself out there, and especially in a public eye, you're just not being effective.
Right, because the more you hide from the public, the more people think you've got something to be ashamed of, or that you're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of whether we agree with that or not, that's the society we live in, and we have to deal with the way other people think about people.
Yep. Is there anything else we wanted to add before we wrap this two-part episode up?
had a thought pop up in my mind a couple of times, and I hadn't really figured out a way to put it out there. But is the concept of where we have to accept everybody because everybody does things differently. Is that like groupthink, special snowflake syndrome?
It kind of is. Like, it's not that, oh, everybody's special. It's, oh, we should support and help everyone. And I don't mind helping people as long as you're mindful that some things just can't be fixed.
Yeah. And not everything's right. There's that, do what works for you, but dude, don't go hurting people just because whatever. Just because it works for you doesn't mean it's right.
Just because you don't like how strong gravity is and you can't change it, don't take it out on other people.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I keep having that thought. Special snowflake syndrome is infecting the whole mindset, and we're going to wind up in a situation where special snowflake syndrome does kill, and it doesn't kill the people who suffer from it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to see a lot of parallels between the mindset of those that, passively endorse this stuff and the positive-only thinkers. They think everything is good and awesome and wholesome. Mm-hmm. And they just, because they're in that positive-only mindset, they are completely blind to all the stuff in front of their face.
Yeah.
And like we talked about in the other episode about positive-only thinking, one of the signs is all your survival instinct essentially disappears. That little warning bell that tells you, hey, something's wrong here, disappears.
Right.
And that's exactly what's going on here.
Yay, connections.
Alright, so we'll be right back after these messages for final thoughts. And now, final thoughts.
I did not inspire enough post-Kirby silences tonight. I apologize, everybody.
I'm going to insert an Amber final thought. It has something to do with raping 5-year-old boys. Fill it in with whatever you want.
You got the MSDS on that?
My final thought is, this seems to have been an issue in Charlotte for a while. And, if only there was, it seems to be such a wicked topic. If only there was a podcast based out of Charlotte, North Carolina, that would have covered this topic. We wouldn't be sitting here today, covering this on PCP. It's a wicked topic for a podcast. Hint, 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 hint. Moving along.
Don't look at me. I barely have time to actually get on this one half the time.
Oh, no,
anymore.
I'm making fun of an established podcast. Don't worry.
Oh, we have an established podcast?
Yep.
Dude.
It's actually one of the oldest Pagan podcasts. They predate PCP. By
Catch me up.
By like a year or two.
I'm pretty sure you're allowed to say their name.
Their name is Wicked Podcast at wickedpodcast.com.
Well,
and I did a Google search, and they have not yet spoken out against raping 5-year-olds.
Wow.
Well, look at it this way. I'm so friggin' clueless that I didn't even know we had one, so they might be in the same boat as to what's going on with this half of the community. we do have a lot of disconnect, and it's weird. It's kind of like, normally I would expect it that you show up at things. I did a blog entry about showing up. Mm-hmm. Just showing up is good. And so you'd think that if you show up for each other's stuff, and that's supporting each other, and that's adding to, because you can actually accomplish quite a bit about, just being a presence, just by showing up, literally having, sheer numbers there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of not that way sometimes. Sometimes it's, if you're showing up to other people's stuff, you're trying to be nosy or you're trying to take it over or something like that. And I can see the viewpoint. It's just not one that I really, it ain't me.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes there's a disconnect because people don't want to appear to be all up in each other's business, or like they're trying to, what's the pagan equivalent of steeplejacking? Doing something like...
I mean, we seem to be the only ones doing it.
There you go.
Hey, now they shot across. They shot. They made a shot across our bow by making fun of snarky podcasts and how they were detrimental to the community, and their press release to compensate for, hey, what'd you say, motherfucker? Didn't pass the scurvy bullshit detector test. So fuck them.
Okay, they're
Wait a minute, was that podcast?
They're detrimental to the... Okay, I'm sorry,
go ahead. Was that
podcast
that I brought up on Audacity?
No, it wasn't the one you post-produced on Audacity to cut out all the crap. This is a different one. This is the one that you were reading a blog post and you're like, yeah, this is just full of crap.
I'm trying to remember.
It was a long time ago.
The problem with my crap filter for stuff I read. It don't really make a big impression on me. I mean, if you've had any idea the level of manure I put up with on a daily basis.
More patience than I have.
No. I think I kind of burn out a few chunks of my brain and, well, I just sort of... Clock keeps moving and I keep breathing. Things keep happening. It's not so much patience. It's just lack of biological ability to respond.
Mm.
So now I'm thoroughly pissed off a group of people that listen to the show. Anybody else have final thoughts?
Wait a minute. Were they the ones that had Lamika on?
Yes.
I actually did bring that one up on Audacity.
Oh, I didn't. I don't recall that one. Sorry.
Yeah. That's when I was listening to it, and yeah, I've listened to a few of theirs. They're on my to get back to list, so we'll see what happens next time I hook my iPod up to a computer.
I guess my final thought is yay, beer and cookies. I win, apparently.
Yay, beer and cookies.
Epic winage.
Amanda, I think you had the highest word count to this episode. Do you have a final thought?
I would have... The only thing I would say is, don't be afraid to call someone out on them being an idiot. Or them being not really safe for the community.
And Barrett, who surprisingly did not have the lowest word count this episode.
Okay, well,
Yeah, Barrett.
my final thought is, if you are starting out in a religion that requires you to do things that you don't feel comfortable with, you're starting out, go somewhere else.
Exactly.
You don't have to follow something that makes you feel uncomfortable.
You don't have to go with the first thing you have to find.
Yeah, and at the same time, groups change, so come back in 5 years. Maybe they'll be not full of fail anymore.
Or epic win.
Yeah. Alright,
Yeah.
does anybody else have any final thoughts?
I think I already said when in doubt, chicken out, but just in case I didn't, when in doubt, chicken out, which is pretty much what you guys already said, just not quite as cool.
Yeah, we're not good at this bumper sticker thing yet, Snooze. For the Draft Peter Diving to be President of the United States campaign, you're going to be in charge of bumper stickers.
Awesome!
Since he's already dropped out of the election, we're going to just have to draft him. We'll just write him in, and he'll just be surprised one day.
Another election and an entire another government and make him head of it.
Did you say he's already go on a countrywide bus tour?
Yep.
There you go.
Nice.
He's actually, what he's doing actually is visiting pretty much all the pagans in the United States, it seems. And what he's doing is having little coffee shop talks, and he just wants to gather what pagans think of the state of the pagan community, where we're going as a pagan community, and what we need to do as a pagan community. And it'd be interesting to see what he comes up with at the end of the year as a grand summary of everything.
Yeah.
In other words, he's being a pagan that gets shit done.
Yep. He is
Yeah.
being the change he wants to see. Kudos on him.
Here, here.
And I just want to leave
When's
this...
he get to Pennsylvania?
I
Or did he already do it?
I don't know, but I think he does listen to PCP. He's probably already pretty well forewarned to avoid Pennsylvania.
Wait a minute. We have listeners?
Don't worry, it's just him, okay? It's just Peter diving. He's got an RV. Nobody even knows who he is, okay?
Okay.
But one thing I just want to bring up, just because it did come up in an interesting conversation this week on Google+, and then it made a reappearance on Peter Diving's blog, is it's not so much that you got to fight against stuff, like fight against predators, fighting against, you know, people raping 5-year-olds. What you need to do is fight for something. Fighting for something is generally less effort and much more productive. So instead of fighting against predators, you might want to fight for a better relationship with local law enforcement, or, you know, stuff like that. You know, so that's just some stuff to keep in mind. You know, if you're a pagan leader, you know, just keep in mind fighting for stuff is generally a lot easier and a lot more productive, and you'll probably get a lot more support for doing it. So, love and light. Yeah, that.
Way to win.
So we actually have no clue what we're talking about next week because we haven't planned it yet. But we'll be back next week talking about something that's centered around paganism, which is the religion scurvy practices. So good night, everyone.
I got an idea. I know what we ought to do for next week.
What?
We need to actually sit down, I don't care if it's productive or not, and just record brainstorming a general code of ethics. I know.
Sounds so
Something
fucking
attainable,
boring.
okay? I mean, people have been doing this for centuries, and we keep failing. I think
Oh
we
yeah,
just need
we're
to
going to be
lower the
successful.
bar.
We're going to make world history on PCP by coming up with a code of ethics we can all agree to. It's actually meaningful.
What if we turn it into a drinking game?
That could work.
Be viable, or that might have actually been done before.
Well, just because it's been done before doesn't mean you guys did it before. Therefore, there could be, you know, if one portion of an experiment doesn't go like you want to, you change one of your controls, right? I'm scientific and shit.
We better plan something other than that. 'Cause
Yeah, we'll find something. We'll dig into the topic box pretty deep.
that kind of round robin has a tendency to crash and burn.
Yeah, in a matter of 10 minutes too. Alright, so we'll be back next week with something. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. See you later.
Good night!
Alright, audio recording has ended.